Okay, welcome now. Bear with me a little while I make sure that the tech is sorted here. Because with full disclosure, I've already messed this up twice. Once I had 54 people online and I couldn't get it to work at all. And the second time I just messed up the recording. So, fingers crossed and everything else. And apologies if you're one of those people who messed around first time. Okay, right, that's very clearly a catchy title and it's just on the edge of being clickbait, but stick with me. And I think that you'll agree that there is a lot that you can do in 30 days and a lot more that you can do during the rest of the year. Now, I don't know what your specific situation is, but you're in the right place if you're running any form of hospitality business and are really struggling to cope with the relentless cost increases and can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Or perhaps you are exhausted with the relentless slog of trying to keep afloat after 3 years of coping with COVID, Brexit and supply chain issues, both cost and availability. Or maybe you've survived well. Maybe you are making money and considering expanding, but you just want to make sure that you don't make the wrong step. So it doesn't matter where you are on the journey or how many locations you have. We have options for you. We have solutions. And here's what you will learn by hanging around. Well, first of all, I am going to go through the problem. I'm going to explain why we have this perfect storm of problems and annoyingly why it is so bad for the hospitality industry specifically. Then I'll explain why more price increases simply won't keep working. And finally, the 3 big traps that you mustn't fall into if you're going to survive. But that will be brief because this is about solutions. It is not about endlessly dissecting the problems. Okay, the solutions. I'm going to show you how, even though everything sort of has changed, the same core rules do still apply and that this is to your benefit. Then I'm going to show you 3 ways to overcome the rising costs without resorting to price increases. 2 ways to supercharge gross profit whilst increasing quality. 4 ways to reduce staff costs whilst making them and your customers happier. I'll also explain why Gordon Ramsay took my advice and changed a product to sell better on national TV. And yes, that was a nice bit of name dropping, but it's really relevant. Then I'm going to show you how you might be losing 30% or more in certain items. And it's a really quick fix. And finally, I'm going to show you the follow the money principle, which is guaranteed to make you an extra 3% profit. Most importantly, especially if you're struggling, I want to show you that all is not lost. There is hope. Even if you're in debt, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So make sure you stay around to the very end because I'm going to show you how you can get a cut down workbook different to the one we put out in advance because I've changed a few things since we created that. And this will help you to implement what we've discussed here. Okay. Briefly, you may be thinking, why am I qualified to give you business advice? Well, just over 30 years ago, I arrived back in Belfast after finishing a business studies degree. And would you like to see what naive looks like? Well, there it is right there, because that is my student card and BABS stands for BA in Business Studies. So I arrived back thinking I sort of knew what I was doing. And I did not. And also, as I'm sure you're probably aware, Belfast was still a horror and then the troubles were very much still raging. Now this picture is 1992 when I came back. I had my very first coffee shop under that green tarpaulin a few years later. This is the same year in the town I went to school in and later opened a garden centre and a cafe nearby. It was a brutal place to work and the economy was a mess. But that really tough environment has really helped me subsequently, especially in situations like we're in right now. So my friend and I set up a sandwich business. And to cut a long story short, we actually did extremely well. We grew very fast and by the age of 28, we had the biggest sandwich business in Ireland. We had a factory making 2.5 million sandwiches a year and 6 shops all making hundreds more every day. But we grew far too fast. We made a lot of classic rookie mistakes and we didn't control our cash flow. We also took on a very dodgy business partner and some complex financing which strangled our growth. So by the age of 29, it was all gone. I'll not bore you with the whole story here, but despite every part of the business being profitable, we had to sell all our shops and assets to pay off this crazy financing situation that we signed up for. Now, we did not go bankrupt, but it was close, and I tell you what, I learned a lot more through the growth and subsequent collapse of that business than I ever did in 4 years at university. Because losing a very high-profile business like that is a little humiliating. There's no point saying otherwise. But the result of that was the beginning of an obsession, one which lasts to this day, to make sure that I know and understand all the pieces of the jigsaw for how these businesses work, how this industry works. And the jigsaw is the way that I used to think about it then. It became very clear to me that despite this business studies degree, and actually doing a lot of things really well, that I was definitely missing some key pieces of the jigsaw. Belfast, like the economy here now, was a really tough place to run any business, but in hindsight, that was good training. And that obsession with finding out the missing pieces, with filling the gaps in my knowledge, did actually quickly turn into success. And in the following 10 years or so, I set up and sold the following: 2 award-winning fish and chip shops, 1 voted the best in Ireland, and both were highly profitable. I also set up a pizza restaurant, an outside catering and events business, a bar with a strong food offer and a catering franchise. And eventually we had the largest chain of garden centres and cafes in Northern Ireland. And they did really well. We won multiple awards and we showed really large annual growth. During this time, I also employed nearly 1,000 people directly, sold over £10 million of retail goods, and sold millions of cups of coffee, portions of chips, burgers, lasagnas, apple pies, pizzas, scones, myriad other food items. But 17 years ago, I decided to stop and move in another direction. I was employing 120 people at that stage, but again, I had business partner problems. My 2 fellow directors would bicker daily, and I was the one stuck in the middle trying to manage and grow the business, as well as dealing with their petty problems on a daily basis. Quite a common story, that. So the fun was sort of gone in that business, and despite the success of it, I sold my shares and left to become a consultant to the industry. I wanted to apply what I'd learned to other businesses. I wanted to take that obsession with creating a completed jigsaw and create a formula that could be applied to other businesses. I wanted to build out the tools, the very tools that we use today, but they weren't fully formed then. The whole jigsaw metaphor has sort of morphed into something more practical. It's become tools, essentially solutions, not just for me, but for others. I wanted to keep testing this, and I wrote 3 best-selling books on setting up and running coffee shops, and each of those have sold tens of thousands of coffees. I've been the lead business speaker at Cafe Culture for over 10 years now. I've held dozens of workshops, training events, and 1 2-day full sort of seminars. I've built training courses for staff and managers of the NHS, Coffee Number One, and countless small chains and independent cafes. In fact, I've even advised Gordon Ramsay live on Channel 4, and rather remarkably, he took my advice and changed the product that they were creating after my suggestions. Now, I'll explain later what that advice was and why it's so important to you too. I've worked directly with thousands of cafe and coffee shop owners from all over the world, either one-to-one or through the various online group programs, coaching programs that we have run for over a decade. Now, why did I tell you all that? Well, it's not to boast, because that would be absolutely pointless. It's to show you that the tools and what I teach is not something that has come out of running a couple of coffee shops or doing an MBA in business. It has come from hard-earned experience and learning from mistakes as well as successes. But forget about me, let's talk about you and what you want for your business. Because I want you to think about how knowing that you have the solutions to the problems which you are currently facing would make you feel. As I say, much of what I'm trying to show you is that there is possibility, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that I have completed the jigsaw, but it isn't quite as simple as that, because there's not just one jigsaw for everyone. And what's really important to understand is that there are different and multiple solutions for each business, because your business isn't the same as everyone else's, even if they may look very similar to many people from the outside. Everyone has unique problems which require different tools and different solutions. I also want to show you, and I know that many of you are feeling this way right now, that this game, this industry, does not have to be all about stress, relentless hard work, and very little financial return. It can still be and should be about much, much more than just survival. So let me try and attempt to flick to the iPad and prove that to you. So unfortunately, this may be some of you right now, but what we're looking at is solutions. Unfortunately, there is a harsh reality here. We cannot just ignore it. Record insolvencies, company insolvencies up 59% in a year. We lost 2.5% of the whole hospitality industry last quarter. Why? Well, there are 4 key sort of horsemen of the apocalypse to create this perfect storm. You know all of them. Cost of goods sold, wage and labour costs have gone up, cost of living crisis reduces the amount that's being spent, and then energy costs. Now, let me just try and go into a little bit of detail as to why the cost of goods sold in particular and energy costs are way above the headline inflation figures. So that's inflation figures from the Office of National Statistics in May, 8.7%. Now, in our game, unfortunately, this is what we're talking about. Sugar, 49%, cheese, 33%, eggs, 28%, milk, 28%, flour and cereal, 23%, gas, 36.2%. So in other words, the inflation that's hitting us is much worse. That's why it's so tough now. If you were to pass all that on to the customer, you should be charging about $4.95 for a flat white and about £5 for a croissant. We all know that would be a hard no from the customer, and that's a big part of what I'm trying to say here. We need to be finding solutions that are not just about price increases, because you can't just do it through price increases. Okay, so let me show you this little example in terms of what that is actually meant as a minimum in terms of, you know, a cafe operating in 2019 and now operating now. So, and say it's doing $500,000, it can be $500,000, pounds, euros, whatever. Back in the day, you might have been hitting 25%. The figures, you know, this would be sort of figures for a business making most of everything, most of their own stuff. Cost of sales 25%, wage cost 35%, producing a prime cost, which is one of the key measurements that we work on, of 60%. So you always want to be 60% or less for that. And then overhead, rent rates, assuming that's all still the same as we move across. Energy at about 2%. Now, we move to 20, that puts 10% to the bottom line, 50 grand of profit out of sales of $500,000. That's a relatively common sort of figure. In fact, actually, a large amount of the industry operate beneath that, and a whole bunch of my job has always been to try and get people from sort of that 4, 5, 6% up to 15, 16, 17%, which still basically those rules apply. Now you might be looking at your cost of sales being a minimum of 30%, your wage cost being a minimum of 40%. So what we've got then is this, we've got this prime cost that's up an extra 10%. We've got energy costs up another couple of percent, and an overall overhead of up and about another 3%, because everything's gone up. So you can see how when you pull those together, you end up taking that 50 grand and you end up at £25,000 of a loss. That is a very common scenario that we're in at the moment. Now, what I want you to do, as we go through this, I want to kind of understand that this is a game of 1%. And what I mean by that is, though we've got our full 100% there, and what we need to try and do is break down the individual key parts. There is no magic wand to suddenly turn that 50 grand into, to get that 50 grand back or to increase it. We're going to work our way through it through various things. But important within that is keeping it in your own head as to what 1% means to you in your business. So under this model, each 1% equals £5,000. If you are turning over £250,000, each 1% represents £2,500. So what does your 1% mean to you? Now, this is the little thing that I'm going to stay to the end. I'll show you how to get this, because this explains a number of key things. You can slot your own information into this. So at the moment, which this is working at, I'm not sure if you can see that clearly. This is just, you would slot in your own sales figures there, your own cost of sales in here, your own wage cost in here. And under this model, it's very similar to what we're working our way through. But this is about showing you how working through the 1%, and just sort of scratching the surface of what we're doing here, you can make these fundamental changes with 1% improvements. It also shows the difference between price increase or margin increases and sales increases in terms of how that would be, how that's going to impact you, because obviously price increases and margin increases drop to the bottom line, just sales are a slightly different thing. Anyway, you can work this piece out yourself. Now, one of the key things, to think about then is, where are you now? So where you are now, everything in the past is ancient history. It's really important to try and just sort of have that mindset. And what we want to try and do is make sure that you're making decisions right now to get onto this ideal line. And when I talk about the ideal line, that is, say, a year from now, you've reached through to the net profit targets that you're looking for, and the business is operating in a way where you're not sitting there with your head in your hands, as it were, anymore. So there's a plan. You need to have an idea of what that ideal line is on. Now, an awful lot of people are moving down here. An awful lot of people have moved so far down here that they have moved into the disaster and gone bust. So where are you on this line? Because the longer that, if you are working down this line, it makes it really difficult to try and catch up to get back up here. And that's why we talk about the importance of trying to make decisions right now that have this proper solid impact upon your future. So the decision making, this is not a time for inaction. There's a lot that you can do. Whole point of what we're trying to do here to get onto this line. So if you are sliding down here, you need to be taking some action in terms of removing that. Now, trap number one, very logically off the back of that, is ostrich heading it. A lot of people are sort of just waiting for things to get better, not really measuring stuff properly, and that is, unfortunately, change your tone of voice, a recipe for disaster. Trap number two, and this is equally a big trap, is expecting more government help. It ain't gonna happen. This petition for hospitality VAT to be cut to 10%, we've already had a hard no about it, but there's a lot of the broad-based, well-meaning industry bodies trying to get more help, but I tell you what, it ain't gonna happen. So don't ignore it, don't expect more help, and try to change your mindset into the fact that actually not everything has changed, because there are still dozens and dozens and dozens of solutions, but there's little 1% solutions. That's what we're going to go through here. Now, think about it like this. If you're going to sort of take responsibility and not expect something else, and anyone, I'm a big fan of Stoic thinking. So Seneca said, it is not in our control to have everything turn out exactly as we want, but it is in our control to control how do we respond to what happens. So if you step back, just accept there's nothing we can do about all of the difficulties, about supply chain issues, about cost increases, about energy. There's nothing we can do right back at the root, but there are lots of things that we can do to be driving through extra sales of new customers, extra sales of average transaction value, extra sales of people coming back more often, and extra sales of additional items. And again, there's a lot that we can do to try and drive down cost of sales, drive down wages, and drive down energy costs. And that's what we're going to be going through today. So I'm going to show you some of those. Now, in terms of principles for how you want to try and look at the business, I talked about how I was originally thinking, hang on, I haven't got all the pieces of the jigsaw together. So I wanted to try and think of, so when I felt we had got those, just having that jigsaw isn't enough. So think about the business in two specific ways. You need to have a really strong set of foundations, So that's the base, and then frameworks. And frameworks allow you to think in a different way. Let me show you what I mean. Frameworks do 4 things, and yes, some quite cheesy pictures here. First of all, if you have a framework for the way that you're thinking, or a model, so that you know that you've got solutions, you first of all, it calms everything down. You think, well, I know I can apply that framework, that tool, that model, because it's tested and it's proven, and therefore that gives you confidence. And yeah, I just think this is brilliant. So that you can then investigate into the business how that framework or model might improve, and finally then you can train that through to your staff, so then that they're not seeing you just knee-jerk running around. You're giving confidence as much as anything else. Now, this is what we call the 4 sales framework, and the 4 sales framework basically is the fact that you make 4 sales each time a customer walks through the front door. Sale number 1 is the attention sale, the ability, so if you regard this as your front door. The attention sale is everything that you do to grab the attention of the customer as they come through the front door. The second sale is the brand sale. The brand sale is that ability for a customer to come in and go, right, yeah, I'm in the right place here. This is what I expected. This is what I thought. I feel comfortable. Yeah, it's not going to be far too expensive. It's not going to be, a really cheap place. I was looking for a particular type of thing, and I'm in the right place. Get that sale right, and then when they get to the product sale, they're much more confident. Then spend more. But you've got to sell them on the product, which is all of your merchandising and the way that your people are engaging with them. And finally, there's a sale and the return. Each of these has dozens of variables which we can adjust to try and increase the sale at each stage, sort of get more people through the front door, make them more comfortable and pre-sold by the time they get to the product, sell more product through merchandising and people, and get them to come back more often. All of those drop much more in here. That's what we're looking at, breaking it all down like that under a framework. So let me show you what I mean with what we call the attention audit. So the attention audit is managing this piece here. And under the attention, and when I say audit, because we do an audit of these, there are 53 variables in total under the attention to get people through the front door. And it's things like the main signage, the A-frames, windows, doors, awnings, alternatives to A-frames, of which we have 19, internal window signage, and identifiers. And that's the number of variables that we have that you can tweak and adjust in each of those sections to get people through the front door. Now, these are some of the increases that we have seen by really completely by doing the very, 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 very best at that. Now, 50% increase by changing the main signage is a real outlier, but I've regularly seen increases of 10% and above by changing the main signage. So 30% increase by using A-frames properly, 10% windows, another 50% could be done using alternatives to A-frames, because sometimes this is 50% of new customers coming through. Ultimately, and as long as you can keep them, that's 50% on your sales. These are top level numbers, but again, just think about the little 1% that I'm talking about, little tiny 1%. In that little model you can have a look at, we're just talking about, it's really, really cautious in saying 1% just from that outside piece alone. But these are the sorts of things, percentage increases, that you can get by breaking it down properly. And as I say, that's just one of the sales. That's the attention sale. You've got the variables to work with on all other 3, and there are dozens in each of those. You maximize those, lots of little 1% wins. But that's what I'm talking about now. It's almost like a kind of surprise, overcomplicate things. This is a tool. It's a framework, but inside there are tools. That's the mechanism that we've now moved into. So what I want to be able to do is show you that you have tools available, and you need to use the right tools. I'm not sure that I covered over all my axes wrong, but different axes for different jobs, different tools for different jobs. So that's the metaphor. Our top level tools, the very that all of the other tools stream out of. For example, I'm going to show you the 99 core things that we have in the menu tool, and there are other items in here and in here. The merchandising and signage, we've got items here, here, and here, multiple items, but this is 99 variables. Show you 99. People is recruit, induct, retain, and then you wrap the whole thing up in a process, and we look at all of your promotional strategy. Every part of these has frameworks and tools to work with. Now, the process is, where are you now? And what we need here is what I call brutally honest thinking, because people don't often people don't know exactly where they are in business. There's an awful lot, particularly in our industry. So you need to know honestly how good, bad, or indifferent it is. Where do you want to get to? What would be that ideal line? What is the obstacle in the way? What tool, skill, process do you need to get from A to B to where you want to get to, and how do you implement that? That's the core process. Now, your A, let's say wherever you are now, and then there'll be a B, which is where you want to go to. In the middle, and this is again another analogy that I've often used, is that what my job is filling the gap. We fill gaps. We find out where the problems are and we fill the gaps along the way. Note, there will be an obstacle, or it would have just happened easily, but we're not looking at the symptom. What do I mean by that? People blame the symptoms. This is trap number 3. So people will say, low sales is not the problem. That is the symptom of countless other scenarios. High cost of sales is not the problem. It is a symptom of menu management that isn't good, or the 31 licks. I'm going to show you what that means. Can't get good staff is a symptom of poor recruitment. High staff turnover is a symptom of poor culture. Now, there may be other symptoms, actual problems in here, but these are some of them. High wage cost is about poor training and process. These are all manageable problems when we actually identify them. So don't fall into the trap of this sort of blaming culture, as it were, here. But this is about taking responsibility. So this is under that little spreadsheet that I showed, or that first one, where we talked about a 5% net being the sort of the A. The B is taking it to 10%. And that's going to break down a little bit as we go through all of this. So if your 1% is £1,000, keep this in your head. If your 1% is £5,000, if you're doing $250,000, then it's 2,500. So we go out, identify the obstacle, but we know that the gap is 15%. That's what we're trying to fill. In other words, 15 individual 1%. The first tool that we're going to go for is the menu, because the menu is the engine. So much can be done with the menu. I'm going to show you a couple of examples in a second of some of the results, but think of the menu as the engine of the business. It's the mechanism that can get you the biggest results in terms of profitability the fastest. So our menu 99 drops down into 8 individual sub tools, which includes things like design, language, costing, pricing, psychology, principles reviewing, all sorts of things. So we've got 99 top level tools. You can't do them all. We've got to break it down into some of these individual ones. And one of them is to do with price perception. So under price perception is to do with lots and lots of different factors. And there's lots of little additional tricks, but this is just one that I want to show you. There's a rule of 5s. There are 5 flavors for every product, 5 textures, 5 colors, 5 ways to present on a broad level, and 5 core descriptors in terms of language. All of these, when you manage them, can quite radically change not just the amount that you sell, but the amount that you can charge for it. So we have seen increases of 35% by really working the ability to charge 35% more. It sounds outrageous, but 35% more by really working the red, having everything red, green, yellow, white and black, because you get this you get an item put on the menu that just looks wildly different, and therefore higher price perception. Same thing with balancing flavors: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. You know, that's just cooking well to a large extent with 5 textures. But the language is a really interesting one, because the use of language properly, which is one of our core 8, has got, these are the 5 descriptors, but there are multiple other ways to use language, and we've seen increases actually of well over 20% just by getting the language right. But what I mean by that, one of those 5 variables in that is sensory. Just, wow, you know, there are how you're describing how the food tastes on the menu. There are 81 individual variables of words that you can use. We have 50 words for the method, and using these words properly really makes a big difference on your menu. You know, char grilled, for example, roasted, that kind of thing. And then the way that you present items, there are some core rules. The frame, keep it simple, balance it out, portion control, and highlighting certain items. You do that properly and use, you know, different crockery, cutlery, colours of plates, and really go to the effort of presenting things properly. That includes teaspoons, everything. We can see increases of your ability to charge by 20%. One of the key areas is very, very high quality crockery in top level top level specialty coffee shops, craft, really high quality coffee shops. Allows them to charge substantially more. Now, it's an expensive cup, but it really quite easily allows you to put an extra 10% onto the price of a flat white. So that framework and working your way through all of those can allow you to charge more for the same item, just with some tweaks. Now, this is from a member of the group, and she just put this in a couple of days ago because she was doing a pop-up. And the reason I've said no excuses is this is what she's an absolute master at this, and we've got a masterclass with her coming up actually. This place, this is a pop-up. This place has no working oven or real kitchen, so I'm working with slow cookers, a camping fridge, and an air fryer. And that's the sort of result that she can come out with. And you can see how, you know, whether the difference of what that would look like if she hadn't put those extra little pieces on to balance out the cover and look at colours and look a little bit of crunch there too. You know, you're maybe looking at the difference between £8 and £10. There's a really big difference in terms of that, and I've consistently seen 20%, 30% increase, up to 30% increases, just by really working presentation and the colours and what the thing looks like. So doing that can very easily give you an extra 5%, reduce the gap by 5%. So we're down to a break even under our little model. And what could you be doing with your menu? If you went through your whole menu, where can you see that sort of a scenario that you could improve yourself? So just think about that one in particular, but there's a lot there. Now, the second one, another menu item, day part maximization, and what I call it, play the game to win. And that line came from a conversation that I had with Peter Dorsmith in Caffeine in London. We were in there and we were taking a client in there, and he was talking. I was showing the client how well Peter does this. Peter didn't know what we were doing, and I explained to the client. I said, "Look, you've basically given a masterclass in maximizing the sales that go on during the day and some of these key areas." And he said, "Oh yeah, we call it how you either win the game or you lose the game at each of the sections during the day." Now, what I mean by that then is, I'll show you. It's maximizing the spend at each time. So you want to think like a restaurant. So here we have a restaurant scenario, and think of this as 10 sales that could be happening within a restaurant. And it's easier to think about it in a restaurant because they kind of do it better than we do, and then we transfer it through to our world. So you come in and they'll try and sell you a cocktail, they'll try and sell you bread and olives, they'll try and sell you starter, main, side, wine, dessert, wine, coffee, and a cure. They may try and sell some other things as well. But if they can get all of those sales to you, and if you think about a well-run restaurant, they are trying to push that all new. You're looking at about, sort of, say, an arbitrary £80 versus if they miss a few of these, you know, here, and here, and they just get your starter, main, and some wine. That's the sort of money that you're looking at down there. Now that's the key. That's the big difference that we want to try then and apply to our game. In our game, we have certain targets for what I call Holy Grail targets for breakfast, morning, lunch, afternoon, and post work. And those are the ones that you then break down and you try and rework back so that you are A, selling more during those times, but B, trying to replace it with high menu items. So at lunch, you won't get it for everybody, but this is the target. You want savory item number 1, the toasted sandwich. Savory item number 2. The ones that I've done here in green are the ones where you can get the real, that people ignore to a large extent. Don't ignore, but you can make real big differences in. If you can get the savory, the salad that goes alongside, the hash nuggets or whatever that goes alongside, you can make a big difference. And then you've got coffee or tea or something sweet. Now the purchased drink is what I'm talking about here. So that's any form of in-house made drinks, lemonades, juices, shots. These are an enormous amount of drinks that you can be making yourself. And these work really well from a price perception as well, because you can generally have a much better margin. So what do I mean? Something like this. These are iced teas put out and sitting on the front, that actually and well merchandised, you know, really obviously there in front of you, suddenly becomes much more appealing than just buying a Coca-Cola. Again, this is from Rebecca, and look at what's the use of colour and the way that it's presented. And these kinds of items, let me just go off on a slight tangent here. So if you're presented with that or that versus that, there's a huge difference in your ability to get that additional sale, that purchased drink. I'll give you one tiny little trick here, because within our 16 rules of merchandising, and this is what I learned by selling a lot of retail, in a retail environment, that you will sell, if you put a sandwich behind a door, you will sell 50% less than if it's opened out. So our 16 rules cover, each one of them covers little tiny rules like that can make an enormous difference. Here we are is the second one. This is another one here that they're missing. I went into, this is for a picture I took about 3 years ago, and unfortunately this business has shut. And it was a little cafe that I really liked, and this was sitting by the till, and I sat there and did a little bit of work for about an hour because I was actually presenting just across the road in an event, and I didn't buy that. I would have bought that if I'd known what it was, and because there was no name, no price on it, and I watched nobody buying it as they go through. So that's that little purchase drink. Now it was a breakfast drink under that breakfast section. They'd gone to the effort of making them, but because they couldn't tell us what they were, we weren't getting any sales. Now, this little quote here was something that came through. This was from a free video that I did on sort of merchandising and making some changes like this. And then we got this response back. This was off the back of watching your video, record-breaking sales today. So something happened, and all we did was we presented a little bit more of the information that we've got in the merchandising. That record-breaking sales, and this wasn't even from a member, but it shows you how powerful some of these things are. It also shows you this could be reducing their sales by a minimum of 30%. It shows you how much might be sitting already in your business, that if you kind of audit it properly, and we have a big audit process. In fact, we do it if you wanted to join. I do it for you if you wanted to join the business club, which I'll talk to you about later. So that back over here, if you look at this in terms of, I'm only putting 1% on here for the merchandising, but the benefit in real terms, it can be huge. And under here, we go from 6.3% net to 9% growth. So this is it shows you what those little 1% will do. Now, Why am I such a fan of bought drinks? Well, there are so many reasons. The first one being higher increased margin. I'm talking about trying to get you increased profit in 30 days. If you're not doing this, this is a really, really good thing to do. Secondly, it gives you a unique identity. I mean, how many times did Coke is everywhere, or near many of the drinks that you may well be selling are just everywhere. You don't want a KVI, a known value item like a Coca-Cola. You want something that's unique. It allows you to have something to sample in store, which increases the loyalty and reciprocity. It's about that brand sale and it's about that product sale. It's about getting people to come back. Sampling in the street allows you to get new customers. Really easy to take out delicious drinks and just hand them out in the street and get a percentage of those people to come back. With a whole process, a 3-step process in terms of using sampling in the street to get people to come back, and it works really well. It's delicious. Okay, so you've got something that is substantially better than something out of a can or a bottle of water or tap water, which means that your sales go up. So we get sales up as well as margin. This is the holy grail. This unique item of it means what I call a make a detour. If you've got consistently a really good lemonade of some type that you become famous for, then people will make a detour out of their way to come to you, or they'll walk past competitors. Nobody shared a can of Coke ever, but if you've got a good, interesting drink, you think about the ability for something like that to be shared in social media. It is versus a can of Coke. And this is why colour and presentation is so much more important than it was 5 years ago. All of our training that we do, talk about in terms of product development, now involves the need to have Instagrammable items. So social sharing, which can get you new customers, and social sharing, which can remind existing customers to get you to return. This has never failed. This has never failed as a tool. In my own business, by doing this, a business that I bought, we went from 10% ratio of drinks being bought with lunch to 75% by doing something along these lines. We've seen tripled, doubled, 54% increase, 78% increase. And as I say, sales and gross profit. And remember, it's just one tool out of a whole, it's one tool out of the 8, out of the 99. I mean, this is one tiny thing to look at. The Ramsay piece. When I was working with Gordon Ramsay in the Gordon Behind Bars thing, he was developing a product. So the B stands for bun. When I say bun, I basically mean any sweet or savory item that works very well alongside a single cup of coffee. Because if you look out over your cafe, coffee shop, whatever, in the morning, and you see lots of single cups of coffee, you have lost the game. Because there is not enough profit. There's percentage profit, but there's not enough profit in a cup of coffee to pay all your bills. You've got to work really hard to try and build this bun offer piece. And what the advice that I gave Gordon was the product that he was developing was too sweet. And at that stage in the morning, we don't want something too sweet. It works in other industries, but that's why bun offers, scones, those things that aren't too sweet work extremely well in the morning. So he changed the product on TV. You can see it on Gordon Behind Bars, and off the back of my advice. Now the reality is, yeah, that's great as a name dropping item, but it really shows you the matching that. I've got clients that can be as low as 5% of a ratio of bun alongside, and I've got clients also who have got, believe it or not, up to 80% of customers are buying a bun at the same time. So that is a wild difference in terms of your ultimate profitability. So now we move forward. If you do all of this properly, you can see that we've dropped another 5% off this and we're making progress. Again, what could you do? What could you do in terms of balancing out those kinds of drinks and so on? Let me show you some menu results, because menu, as I say, it's probably the most powerful tool, but it depends a bit on what your problems are. So this is I'm going to come back to this. Sean Kieran, average spend has increased by approximately 30 to 40%. because they launched their new menu over a week ago and looked at the results. Kitchen flow has been ironed out so one person can work in store days. I'm going to come back to that one. Finally got round to listening to the full. It's bloody brilliant. Thank you, John. So much appreciated hearing all of this. This was from a piece of training that I did during COVID to show how to rework some menus from a takeaway perspective, because menu work needs to be continual, but you can make huge changes through it. Rebecca Green, your help has been amazing. Just this weekend a menu has increased by over treble. That's a weekend menu over treble. Now this is overall menu work. We've massively increased GP, reduced staff costs, and despite of a bit of drop in customer numbers, the sales numbers are up. I honestly can't believe it. So these are all results just predominantly from menu work. But it's sales and profit on both of those. So let's move on to process and a profit solution. This is kind of less sexy, less interesting. Following the money, it's about measurement, and that takes a little bit of time, is a little bit boring, but the results are amazing. So what it is about is finding out what is your actual gross profit right now, what are you getting, and what is the theoretical gross profit that you've got from your costed menu. Now, you may or may not have everything costed, but to really get this right, and it is so worth putting the effort and time into it. So what I'm talking about is the money that goes into the till. Between the money that goes into the till and the money going into the safe in the bank, there are 31 ways to leak gross profit. So if your theory is from what you've sold, say 80% is what you should have made out of what you sold, and you're actually banking 73%, we have got a 7% gap. And there are 31 ways to hunt that gap down. 31 potential leaks within this little flowchart here that, yes, I have got covered up because this is gold dust. Now, for one client who worked with a previous version of this, which wasn't quite so detailed, she took her business in Leeds, which was doing £500,000, and took it from 0.5% net profit to 18% net profit. And 95% of the work that she did was simply sitting down with the staff every week and following the money, working the gross profit flow chart. This was the NHS work, 1.8 million to £700,000 worth of profit, 1.8 million of loss. That was mostly to do with following the money. This is a quote from James Chaplin of Coffee Number One. When we implemented this in his business, it made me an extra £300,000 of net profit in the last 6 months. This is never less than 3% of extra gross profit when you do it. And as I say, there's a little bit of work on this, but it drops to the bottom line. And again, it's just one tool. That's 3%. Again, if your 1% represents £2,500, that represents £7,500 of either extra profit or taking you out of a bad place if you're in a loss. So we've taken another 3% off, and we are now, I've just taken the 2% off, and we're back up to our 10%. So that's how easy it is, despite the fact that there's a chunk of work within all of that. So what does 3% mean for you? That's what I'm saying. Part 4, profit solution 4. We need more staff. We're still in process here. So staff, you will have heard this at times. We need more staff. But what I'm saying to you is, and there's a real process to put this in place, is there are other solutions that when staff come to go, we need more staff, they aren't thinking about all of those solutions. So this involves kind of working with, there's a whole process to work with them to look at equipment, training, layout, and process. Your 4 solutions, potential additional solutions that do not involve more staff, because your staff costs are your biggest cost that you have. Get this right and everybody's happy. Some results. Current member in Kansas went through this whole process, because we have a process for putting this in place from start to finish. Her busiest Saturday in the past had been $1,880. When she was away, after she implemented all of this, and she spent about $500 on equipment, that was all she did. she was away one weekend, so therefore wasn't there and capable of managing it herself. And they were very, very busy, and they did $3,300. She only noticed that at the end of the day and thought, all hell's going to break loose, because she knew that they were one member of staff down. But when she contacted the manager, everything worked really smoothly. So one less member of staff and nearly doubled sales. This is another very seasonal cafe on the East Coast in the States. Their maximum coffees were 600 under the layout that they had. One small Zoom call that I did, about 10 minutes, we were able to move a few things around so that they could move the 600 to 660, put 10% on, and then bring back the food in that they'd taken out so that they could get the additional spend from that. So that goes from 2,700 to 2,900 from the extra 10% on a busy day, and then you put the food on, you're going from 2,700 to 4,158, and that was through nothing more than layout changes, a little bit of menu work to get items that could go into their existing equipment there that didn't slow the whole process down. So that's how big a deal this can be. 2 full-time to 1 twice via dishwasher. That's one originally in my own business. I was able to buy, we spent £15,000 on a dishwasher. Which allowed us to go down from 2 members of staff doing that dishwashing to 1. And a client did that recently, exactly the same thing. So there's so many other additional savings through this is through changing grinders. So there's tiny details of how when you're busy of changes that you can make that really add up over the year. Now, this little knife is a perfect example of a piece of equipment where you don't have to spend £15,000. These are, as you can see, £7.42. When I was doing 2.5 million sandwiches a year, we used to cut the tomatoes with this, not this knife, but a very, very similar bread knife to this. And it's the wrong tool for the job. But when you're doing 2.5 million sandwiches a year, 95% of them involve a tomato, and you can cut that tomato into 5 faster than you can cut it into 4 using this, you have radically changed your margin. And I only worked this out recently, that when we made that change, that made an extra £40,000 of extra profit in the year, because you are, as I say, 5 tomatoes. This will also, these are razor sharp, but this will also not damage the tomato as much. So that slightly fractionally thinner piece of tomato will hold better in the sandwich, but that's the difference that it makes over 2.5 million. So somewhere in your business, there are little tiny tools like this that you're using incorrectly, or bigger things like dishwashers, whatever, that's worth spending money on, but then looking at the benefits that you get. And these are the benefits. When you work with the staff and do the whole process properly that we talk about, they're involved and they are happier, because it's an easier place to work. Where it's an easier place to work because you've maximized layout, equipment, process and training, then you've got happier customers because it's moving faster. You've got more sales because those staff are more relaxed and they're able to work on the customer service, which means a happier you, because you've got more profit. So working that process, which is just one part of our process section, just one part, can make an enormous difference to your business. When we started consulting, we used to regard ourselves as the counter specialists. This was a piece of work that we did. When we started, it was £250,000 worth of sales in this cafe that we were asked to come in and consult. Now, the owner of that business, this is what she said: do not make it busier, because she just wanted it to work better. We spent £38,000 and we basically spent it on all 4 of those items. So it was a big job. The end result was that it went to £600,000. Now you think that's like she didn't want that. She did, because we brought CAM with that. We also brought, off the back of that, a very large amount of investment funds to then allow her to move on to a second location. And so this is what, in other words, this is basically what I used to do to begin with, is working my way around these, and these are the sorts of results that you can achieve. And this is why I wanted to show what Sean said again. Kitchen flow has been ironed out so one person can work on the slower days. That's one person less off the rota, and you know what a big difference in terms of cost that makes. His spend is up 30 to 40%, but it's less staff. So, using all of those, you can see how easily, just what we've touched on today, you can reach that 10%. So to recap and think about your own 1%, the 4 sales framework, just touching the attention sale, has 53 variables, and that alone can get you up to 50% of an increase in sales. The price perception tools and working around that big 5 increased sales and margin, and up to 35% sales increase. Day part maximization, sales and profit. And as I say, drinks alone can make a huge difference, and done properly, can't emphasize this enough, it never fails, and you can do it with a bit of creativity anywhere with almost no kitchen facilities. It's very, very easy to do, depending on what it is that you choose. Merchandising shot mistake that I was talking about. Where are you losing 30%? What are you doing along those lines that is potentially costing you? Follow the money, an extra 3% margin drops straight to the bottom line. At least we need more staff. Could you double your sales with the same staff? This is the tip of the iceberg of the tools and the frameworks that we have. That's the key point. Where are you now? What is your gap? What does 1% mean to me, you? What is your obstacle? What is stopping you getting from the A to the B? And what does B look like in terms of sales, profitability, time off, and sort of sense of the business being back to what it is that you want? So the really big question is, what if you can apply all those 1%? I'll show you how to get this at the end. What would that mean to you? And how many are you letting slip? Because there's active work to do to put in more 1%, both in terms of sales and profitability, but active work to do to control what is slipping. So that's ultimately what we're looking at, and you need to be trying to consider what the impact of just some of those are on your business. Please remember, this is not just theory. This is exactly what I learned and developed in my own businesses after learning the harsh lessons to begin with. But most importantly, these tools, this completed jigsaw, has been developed, improved, refined, and proven over 20 years of working with clients. And they apply if you've 1 site, 10 sites, or hundreds of people working over dozens of sites in various markets. So what's this all about? Well, most importantly, it's about helping you get control back over your business. It's about finding those 1% in dozens of ways and feeling confident that you can keep growing sales and reducing your cost of sales as well as wage costs, despite the relentless cost increases. It's about creating a business that works as a system with multiple processes, which doesn't require you to be there at all times. Now, I'm not sure why you showed up today. It could be because your business simply isn't making money. It could be because you are exhausted and simply can't see how you will ever return back to profit. It could be because you're expanding and want to create a new, more solid base for the future. But I really hope that you do get this one thing. These tools really work. They are tried, tested, and proven solutions to the problems, the real problems, not the symptoms, that you and your business face. These tools, these frameworks and strategies have utterly transformed the lives of so many of our members. But there is no point in saying otherwise. It is actually tougher now than I've ever seen. And the need to take action and not slip down that red line is more urgent than ever. Inaction now will cause real pain. The insolvencies are relentless, and that's because the problems and cost base increases are real. Now is not a time to sit back and consider taking action in a few weeks. You can make a big difference in 30 days, and I see it every week with members who are applying the tools, reporting record sales and record profits. And we have several members who are also expanding or opening up new revenue streams within their existing businesses. The group call just last week, we had 2 members reporting record sales. Firstly, we had Ruth, who is up between 10 and 30% per month this year. Now that's compared to 2019, which was her last good year. She has just had a record week in June, which has historically been her worst month. But crucially, she's actually opened a third less than she was before. And she has totally removed herself from working on the floor. And the actual measurable footfall is 50 to 60% less than it was before COVID, because it's one of those locations in a transport hub that has been radically affected by changing customer behaviour, so her results are even more impressive. So she's busier, much easier opening hours, doesn't have to work so hands-on, and she's making much more profit. And because she's improved her margins so much through the menu work. In fact, her gross profit margins are so high now that one other member jokingly described them as ridiculous just a couple of weeks ago. But it really shows what can be done with margins, even during the endless cost increases. Or take another member, Hovig. He only joined a few months ago, and one of his biggest problems when he joined was being able to take any time off to work on the business. He, when he joined, felt that he simply couldn't take time away from that day-to-day work. Or it would all fall apart. And again, that's really common. But we quickly showed him how to do that, how to free up the time. And he subsequently applied the tools to the key areas that were causing him the biggest problems. Now, the result last week was his best week ever. Record sales, and he wasn't even there. He was in Los Angeles and his cafe is in London. He was 9 hours time difference away, and everything worked smoothly. Now, that was unthinkable before he joined. So the obvious question is, how do I apply these tools to my business? Well, you've got a choice. You can do it slowly, using trial and error, taking some of what I've shared today, or you can do it quickly using our full Business Club 5-tool process. Everything we teach is designed to be easy to use and implement. And we've re-recorded everything in the last year so that it's specifically designed also to be used by managers, supervisors, and anybody else on your team. And that's partly been Ruth and Hovig's success. It's very hard to implement any change when it just has to be forced through or driven through by you personally. Now, I'm a big believer in the Einstein quote, everything in life should be made simple as possible, but not simpler. And that's how we structure the program. We have videos, templates, checklists, spreadsheets in different formats, planning documents, mind maps, but it's all in simple, easy to use formats. It's designed to give you the solution, every single thing that you need to get from your A to your B. And it's not designed to overwhelm you. It's the real magic of the club is actually not just the training and the content. It's about the ongoing support and initially real direct input from me to help provide you with a specific plan for your business right now. But it's also about the support from the other members who are testing, trialing, implementing and feeding their results back into the group. So what exactly is it? Well, it's an online group training and coaching program which covers in great detail every single one of our top level tools with multiple case studies. But it's designed to give you a proper coherent plan that you can be confident of and avoid randomly trying new tactics or actually just not knowing which way to jump at all. So for example, not just do you get the 99 menu tools in videos, text, templates, checklists, etc. You also get worked examples from previous and current members. In the people section, we cover recruitment, induction training, and retention with ongoing training. But here's a little insight from that though. It's a golden rule that I was taught a long time ago. Proper pre-selection, i.e. recruitment, always buys more than training. Now, that means put a lot more effort into your recruitment, and our recruitment tools include something that we call the upside down advert. Now, that tool has totally transformed the recruiting ability of dozens of members. One member who couldn't get any response at all to his adverts for their cafe in Dublin was inundated by responses from great applicants when he applied this. You can actually still see it in action on the Dublin jobs board, and the reaction is incredible. So if you've got recruitment issues, like many people do have, then this tool is for you. Plus, every week we have a live Q&A where you can ask any questions about any part of your business. And these are recorded, so even if you can't make it, this is a tremendous resource because you can submit questions in advance, or just go back and watch them again, which many members do. Each Q&A starts with members sharing wins, and there is real gold in these because these are what are actually working for others right now. We have a monthly theme dealing with other issues. We've covered many aspects of management training, and we've also covered how to increase footfall, how to get free publicity, how to reduce energy costs. And then what we do is we have an extra Q&A and live sessions to support that. With regular planning sessions as well. Now, when you join, I personally review your business. After you've filled out a brief questionnaire, take no more than 50 minutes. I review that and deep dive into identifying what your critical issues are, and then I point you towards the specific tools that will help you get the fastest results. Okay, the big question, how much will this cost me? Well, it is a tiny fraction of what one-to-one consulting costs. It's a tiny fraction of each 1% that you will be saving. Now, to join the business club costs just £147 per month, or we have a special deal with yearly membership where you can save nearly £300. And obviously, since we've got members from all over the world, this is applied in your own currency. But you don't have to take my word for it. We want to make sure that you have no risk. And that's why we have a full 30-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. So, to sum up, if you want a better business with more money for less effort, there's simply no better system or training out there. There's nothing comparable anywhere in the world. It is exactly what I needed when I was building my own businesses, and it is exactly what I needed to have to prevent the collapse of my sandwich business. And you get everything immediately, nothing's held back, and we have a few tricks that you'll discover in the first week which will pay for your whole year, not just the first month. That's why I'm so confident with the guarantee. And as I say, you get my personal attention support, as well as that of other members via the weekly calls and our private group. Plus, it's all guaranteed. If you are unhappy at all for any reason, I don't even like my accent, you can have your money back. So click the link below and I'll see you on the other side.